Hello! My last 3 videos have been Jacqueline Wilson themed, and this is the first one in my streak of 3 that isn't, so a little bit sad, but you know, we had to say goodbye to the Wilsathon at some point, but although I'm not totally ready to say goodbye because this video today is kind of inspired by the Wilsathon. I mean, not directly, but sort of. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 books that I want to reread in 2021, and I am notorious at being a shit rereader. I just don't reread books. I think it's because I have such a huge TBR that I just, in my brain, I just cannot justify reading a book that I've already read when there are so many books that I have yet to read. Which is silly because my memory is so awful that sometimes rereading old books feels like reading new ones, honestly, because I forget so many of the details. And I'm really glad the Wilsathon happened because that actually forced me to reread books, because obviously that was our Jacqueline Wilson themed readathon, and the whole point of it was to get nostalgic about our childhoods and, you know, celebrate Jacqueline Wilson. So obviously for that readathon I reread a lot of books that I'd read before, and I really enjoyed it. I loved that sense of familiarity, but then also discovering new details that you know obviously had forgotten in like the span of whatever 10 years or something. So I really want to make it a priority this year to reread some books, and so that's why I'm making this video for like accountability, and I'm going to list out 5 books I want to reread this year, and then obviously hopefully by the end of 2021 I can look back and be like, yes, I did that. I read all of those books. So the first book that stood out to me when looking at my shelves and deciding what I wanted to reread was Fables by Bill Willingham. Sometimes I think it's Will Billingham, and it's not, it's Bill Willingham. And this is volume 1 of a graphic novel series that is based around fairy tales. So from memory, and my memory cannot be trusted, let me tell you, this is about a town where sort of fairy tale characters are real, and it's about like the politics between like the kind of, I don't know, like the attractive princesses and the kind of less attractive like goblin characters. There's kind of like some class differences, I think. Like I remember at the time thinking that it was Once Upon a Time but kind of targeted at grown-ups and dealt more with the kind of trauma and politics of like these archetypes that people are placed into from memory. I always gone about how shit my memory is, and I could just read the back, like it's right there. Imagine that all the characters from the world's most beloved storybooks were real and living among us with all their powers intact. How would they cope with life in our mundane, unmagical reality? The answer can be found in Fables, Bill Willingham's celebrated reimagining of the venerable fairy tale canon. From Snow White and the Big Bad Wolf to Goldilocks and Little Boy Blue, the folk tales of old are reborn here as exiles living in the magically camouflaged New York City neighborhood of Fabletown. So I was almost right. So it's like fairy tale characters just existing in modern day, and I think it's about some of the tensions between them. I remember really enjoying this at the time, and I think this series is like a really iconic one in the graphic novel community, and this is a really beautiful edition of it. I love this kind of hardback edition and the design of the cover, but I need to reread this one before I carry on with the series, because if I open up that second volume, I'm not going to remember anything. So I need to reread this one, and then hopefully I can carry on with the rest of the series. Another book I really want to reread is My Favorite Manson Girl by Alison. I remember adoring this book. It was such an easy 5-star read for me. It has everything that I enjoy. It's a female focused narrative, and it also has some kind of true crime elements. Obviously there's a focus on the Manson family, but it's done in a way that doesn't sensationalize it. And from memory, which again, we don't know if that's true. So I remember this being about a girl called Anna, and no, that's not the reason I like it, but yes, we do share a name. And she runs away from home. I believe she's quite young, so 15, 16, but obviously, you know, at that age you think you're a lot older and you can do whatever. So she runs away from her home to LA, and her older sister is in LA, and she's like, oh, I want to stay with you, like, parents are so annoying, blah blah blah. And Anna's older sister is an actress, and so in order for Anna to raise the money for her flight back home, her older sister comes up with the idea that Anna should help the older sister's ex-boyfriend with his documentary film. I know that would be way easier to understand if I remembered everyone's names, but I do not. So basically, Anna has run away from home, living with older sister, and older sister is like, hey, you need to raise money for your flight back home because I can't afford it and you need to go home. So my ex-boyfriend is like doing a documentary on the Manson cult. Do you want to do some research for him and he'll pay you That's essentially the setup. And then the more that Anna begins to research the Manson girls, the girls specifically, so the girls that were in Charles Manson's cult who, you know, did all of the violence in the end. You know, Charles Manson didn't actually directly kill anyone, he just influenced others to do that for him. The more that Anna researches these girls, she realizes that they're all girls from disadvantaged backgrounds, low income backgrounds, or girls that had run away from home, girls that were homeless, girls that had come to LA, girls that had come to the city in search of something more, girls that were vulnerable, and girls that were hungry to be seen and to be part of something, and they just got caught up in something horrendous. And Anna draws parallels between the lives of the Manson girls and her own life. You know, she's also a young girl that feels lost and misunderstood, and she's come to LA, this big city, in search for something, and she doesn't exactly know what that is. And when you're at that point in your life, it is so easy to be swept up in something because you're so desperate to feel like wanted and to feel a sense of purpose. And obviously that doesn't excuse the fact that the Manson girls went on to kill people, and I think this book strikes a perfect balance of humanizing the Manson girls and understanding how they did what they did, but understanding is not the same as condoning. So I think it does strike that good balance of like not focusing on the gritty, gory details, humanizing the girls, but also acknowledging the huge tragedy of it all, you know? And this book is so visual as well. I remember it playing out like a film in my head, and you know, when I like do my little daydreams of like my future as a female film director in the industry, I'd love to adapt this novel. I think it's wonderful, and we don't get enough sort of sensitive female-led depictions of true crime events. A lot of TV shows or documentaries that focus on true crime or murder or, you know, cults feel very like male driven, and they focus on, you know, the bloody photos of the victims and all of this, and I feel like there's a much more interesting angle to be had on that story. For example, a docufiction film by Kitty Green called Casting JonBenet, which is wonderful. I saw it at the Berlin Film Festival, and I believe it's on Netflix now, and it is the most incredible true crime thing I've ever seen, because it is this hybrid of documentary and fiction. So obviously the JonBenet Ramsey case is infamous, and there is so much rumour and speculation surrounding that case. And the thing with that case, which happened in 1996, is that there's no new information, right? So why would you make a new film or a new documentary on it when there's no new information? There's no way to know. All of the physical evidence is out of date, all of the people that were involved, there's just not enough evidence. There's no way of knowing unless one of the people who were involved one day confesses. There's just no way of knowing what actually happened in that house where that little girl died. But what Kitty Green does in this docufiction film, she doesn't aim to uncover the truth, she doesn't aim to finally give you answers to this mysterious case, she doesn't sensationalize it. Her docufiction film is a critique of the kind of sensationalism. It's a critique of the people in the neighbouring towns that gossiped about it without actually knowing any of the facts. It's almost a critique of the true crime community itself that is seeking all of these answers, and it just leads you to like wild speculation. And it's just such an original take on a true crime thing. I just think it's so interesting, and obviously because it's directed by women, it feels a lot more, it's more interesting and it's more sensitive. And I'm not saying that a man couldn't have directed something like that, but I'm just saying that women tend to have a more sympathetic and less sensationalist view of kind of violent crimes, especially crimes against women. So this novel has always fascinated me for that reason, and I would love to see it on screen, would love to be involved in it. If anyone's got the rights, hit me up. But yeah, I'm at the point now in my directing career where I've left university and I want to kind of, you know, start figuring out what my style is, what I want to direct, what I want to make, and very much it's sort of in this vein, you know, stories focused on young women that really explores that sort of transitional liminal phase when you're a teenager and you don't really fit in anywhere and you've left behind childhood but you've not reached adulthood yet. I find that's a really fascinating time period in somebody's life, and I would love to revisit this book and just relive it, picture it in my head, maybe adapt it one day. Watch this space, I don't know. Another book I need to reread is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Either earlier this year or last year, I'm not sure, time has, I don't know, Time is not my friend right now. But at some point in recent memory, I recommended this to my friend Rowan, and she read the whole series and she really liked it, and she was messaging me when certain things happened in the books. And I don't know, I just didn't know. Like, obviously, like, there were certain big events that I remember happening, but this is allegedly one of my favourite YA series. I always recommend it to people, and then I realised that I've actually forgotten huge elements of it, and then I started panicking when Rowan started messaging me about all these things, being like, oh my god, there's so much I don't remember. What if it isn't actually that good and I recommended her a bad book? I don't think that's true. I think it's a great book. I loved it at the time, but I just want to reread it so that all the memories come flooding back and I can like recommend it in good conscience, because I'm like, yes, it is a good book. I love it. So after doing Wilsathon, I'm on a bit of a nostalgia high. I always am, let's be real. Like, I always rewatch the teen films from my childhood. You will always find me rewatching Princess Diaries, Lizzie McGuire, Cinderella Story, The Parent Trap. Just the vibes are impeccable. Freaky Friday, classic. And this book is nothing like any of those, but it is a series of unfortunate events, and I have this very ugly movie cover, but it's a bind up of the first 3 books, so it's a very chunky boy and it will definitely keep me going. But this is a series I adored as a kid. My mum read these books to me, which was really nice because my dad was reading me Harry Potter, my mum was reading me Series of Unfortunate Events, and they're both such iconic children's series. But for obvious reasons, Harry Potter doesn't necessarily bring me the same levels of comfort and joy as it once did, so I'm itching to return to this series. And again, this series is so long, it's 13 books, and there are definitely so many details that I have forgotten that I would love to remember. This film is another one of my all-time favourites, and that's why I never watched the Netflix TV show, because I just can't cheat on the film. The film is just gorgeous in every single way. I've talked about it before on this channel. I just think every single aspect of that film could not be improved upon. I think it is perfect, and I'm so mad they didn't carry on with the same creative team, because it was just gorgeous. And so I want to reread this series, and then I can have the movie version of the books that weren't adapted just playing in my head, and that would be very fun. And talking about nostalgic teen films, I'm gonna reread Vampire Academy. Just for the lols. Last year I actually rewatched Vampire Academy. The film was not good, and it was like not good in the sense that I actually started to doubt if the books were ever good, which is stupid because I was obsessed with this series. I mean, I remember being ill and I ordered this book because I wanted something that was fairly kind of easy and fun to read, and I just ended up like storming through this 6-book series in like a week, because I was just off school sitting in bed, like had to find out what happened next. It was so addictive, and the film just did not do it justice at all. But what's really embarrassing is I think I actually really enjoyed that film as a teen, because for some reason I was on change.org, I was like looking at some petitions that I'd signed, and I just, you know, got a bit curious and started going back through some petitions to like see what had happened as a result of the petition, and the first ever petition that I signed on change.org was to get a movie sequel to Vampire Academy. How embarrassing is that? Like, what was I? My film graduate self is ashamed of 15-year-old me who signed that petition, because that movie is a travesty. It is so bad. So I really want to revisit the book series and just confirm that it is as fun and addictive and iconic as I remember. And maybe, you know, it will get a second chance on screen. You know, if Shadowhunters can get 1 million adaptations, why can't Vampire Academy? So those are all the books I would love to reread in 2021. I really hope I get to them all. I've got quite a nice mix of like teen novels, children's novels, and a graphic novel. I'm just looking at my pile and I'm like, they're kind of all teen novels. But anyway, I'm just nostalgic for my teen years. I wish I was a teen again. My life was so much simpler back then. It was just fanfic and vibes. That's what it was. I miss that time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope I actually read these books. It would be really embarrassing if I didn't after having made this. But definitely let me know if you're a rereader and what books you plan to reread in the near future, or if you're not a rereader and why. Just chat to me in the comments. I'll be very happy to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Bye.